Welcome to another Kit Car Talk with Street Rod Jim. Hi everyone, welcome to the channel about kit cars and other car topics. If you like what you see, please subscribe, hit the notification buttons. So, in the last video, we went out and actually drove the car, and there's multiple issues that are going on, and so I kind of wanted to sit down and talk about what's happening. So first and foremost, the ECU, I don't think the ECU is broken by any means. It's just not learning the way I want it to learn, and I'm having a hard time getting idle, and as you heard me driving around, it's surging a little bit. And, you know, so there was a tuning guy that I was going to have come do my car when I had a GM ECU in there, which those are actually really bulletproof ECUs, and they're great for tuning and stuff like that. And I remember that I was having a pedal issue, finding a right pedal that would fit the car without modifying and stuff like that. And that's why I bailed and I went to the Holley system. And I still don't have a problem that I went with the Holley system. That's fine. However, you know, they talk about these things like, oh, you know, it's full learning and, you know, you just install it and you're good to go. And that's not really the case. These things need a little bit of love and attention to get them to actually operate correctly. And yes, they do have some learning functions, but at the end of the day, what you really need to do is have it programmed and then put it on 5% learning, which, you know, accounts for different temperatures, different types of gas, you know, environmental issues that are going on that day or whatever. It's a cloudy day with moisture compared to a hot, dry day, you know, that kind of thing. That's where you want the ECU to learn. The other thing, which I don't believe was apparent in the manual, is yes, the ECU, you know, learns over time and it saves. And I always assume that you save it to the SD card so you could take it in and do some programming, if you will, or configuration, which one of my viewers pointed out. But it turns out, which I don't believe I saw in the manual, which the manual is nothing. Like they don't tell you anything. It's just like a quick start guide, if you will, if barely that. Is every time you pull the negative cable off, it dumps the memory. So let's say you do all your configuration, you upload to the ECU, you know, get the thing to learn, it's learning the idle, you drive it around, you know, okay, a month later, this thing's learned a bunch of stuff. That does not stay in the computer if the negative, you know, if you disconnect the battery. That just dumps. So over time, you have to keep saving to the SD card. And then if you disconnect the battery and connect the battery again, you need to actually upload the SD card, all that stuff that was learned, and back into the ECU. And so that's not really apparent, at least in the version of directions I have. So I think that was one thing that was working against me. However, when I went driving the other day, it seemed to get worse and worse and worse as I went. Like, at first, I had all the surging issues, and then like lap 3, it was like, hey, this is starting to even out. Because when you heard that surging, not to say that my intuition reaction is to try to work the pedal. I'm sure that was happening too a little bit. But for the most part, I was just holding the pedal steady, and all that surging was the ECU trying to figure out what's going on. But then around lap 5, which I don't know if I showed all the laps on the video because they were just snippets, but all of a sudden it's starting to backfire. It actually stalled once while I was like the furthest away from the house, and so I had to pull over and then try to get it started again and like take it straight home because I didn't want to be stranded again. And so these are things that, you know, obviously a tuner needs to come in and just take care of. Now, I called Holley tech support, and of course he's explaining the whole save thing, and I'm like, really? That's not explicit in your stuff? And the second thing is like, well, let's tune this, and then, we'll move this over here, move that over there, and then we'll do it a little drastic, and so you can see what the results are, and then get back to me. And I'm like, that's great, and I appreciate your help, but I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't know what the difference would be. I don't know which setting did what. I'm not a tuner. And I'm not an engine expert to know exactly, yeah, I know what a fine-tuned feeling engine is when I'm driving it, but I don't know all the boundaries of what it took to get there. And so I kind of felt that, yeah, I could go down this road for 8 months with Holly, tech support-wise, since I don't know enough to give him the feedback he needs to help me tweak this thing in. Or I could just call my tuner guy. And so what I did is I ended up calling the tuner guy. I said, hey, I talked to you before when I was doing a GM ECU. I now have this Holley Terminator. Are you familiar? He's like, absolutely. And he's like an LS expert. So he's like, yeah, he goes, it's kind of a joke that these companies like, Holley and Phytech, he said Phytech's even worse, that, they're like, oh, you just set it and forget it and it's all good to go. And it really isn't. And he's like, we pull off Phytech systems all the time and replace them with other things and tweak them in. And he reiterated that, the GM computer is like bulletproof. It's the best thing that you could use. And so, again, I don't have any problems that I have the Holley system. I think it's going to be fine. It's just I'm not the person to dial it in. And the automatic learning system is not the thing to dial it in. So that's kind of the next step when it comes to getting the engine to run right. Now, here comes another issue. So when we first started the engine while it was on the jacks, we were trying to get as much trans fluid into the transmission. And as we were doing that, you want to run it through the gears so the fluid gets throughout the whole, transmission, and things are working, and it's sucking that fluid in instantly, and so you got someone right there to like pour it in. And we got 9 quarts of fluid in. Now, I believe it's supposed to go to 12. But no matter how long I run it, whatever gears I try to get it into, it's saying it's full and we're at 9 quarts. So something's wrong there. I figured if I take it on the street, maybe we could run through the gears and open it up and get things to like happen and keep checking the fluid. Well, I'm not noticing that it's shifting. Then again, the engine's running like crap, so it's hard to tell. So I talked to tech support with the transmission people, and they're like, well, we got a local place you could take it to, which actually is right down the street. I've worked with them before. I have no problem with that. The issue is, when I talk to them, they're like, well, we can't really tech out the transmission unless your engine's running perfectly smooth. Okay. So now I'm in a catch-22, which I've been in with this car since day one. It's always catch-22s. No matter how well I plan and I calculate, like, what's the easiest way moving forward, what's the safest way moving forward, what's the most logical way to move forward, it doesn't matter. It's always some catch-22, because I didn't think I would have to have the ECU programmed. I thought it would just learn itself, and I'd do 20, 30 laps in one day, and we'd be great, and then good enough for where I'm at right now. And then once I get the car fully built, boom, we keep going, and 3 months later, it's all good to go. I have an overpowered engine. I'm not interested in racing. I think it will be fine for the street. Well, that's not the case. That's not how it's going to be. So now we're going to have, a tuner come out and tweak it in. And I'm fine with that too. That's totally cool. But I was kind of thinking I might get away with that and save that expense, if you will, because it's auto learning. It's just not the case. Or at least not the case with someone like me, of where I'm at with that expertise of tuning, which is 0. So, so now we're in this whole catch-22. The transmission guy's thinking, well, it sounds like there's a stuck solenoid or something like that, because what's happening is when the engine's off, I can move into any gear I want. So you got park, reverse, neutral, drive. Well, I guess it's overdrive. We'll call it drive 3, and then 2 and 1. And When the engine's on, I have access to park, neutral, reverse, drive, and I do not have access to 3, 2, and 1. Like it just doesn't exist. I can't physically put the stick there. And every once in a while, after like 20 minutes of screwing around, I might get the stick down there. And I was hoping that would happen while I was on the road. And honestly, I don't even remember if I did or not. I'm assuming not, but it might have happened once. I just don't remember. There's too much information going on. And so, you know, here I am in this catch-22. Now you sit there and say, well, okay, so now you get it tuned, you know, take it to the trans shop. Well, you got to remember, my wiring is a rat's nest, and it's done right, but it's a rat's nest, and it's sitting in the passenger seat. So if I'm going to have a second person in the car, now I need to get all that off the floor and somewhere above the transmission. That's a task. And then I don't feel comfortable having a second person with a wire coming off, you know, to his laptop or whatever, with an open drive shaft. So now I have to mock up something to close that drive shaft up, or try to get the trans tunnel in. But why would I put the trans tunnel in when the next thing I'm going to do is take it down to the transmission shop? So there's like all these kind of things like that, you know, I'm just trying to explain to people, like, this is what you have to go through to deal with this stuff when you have these issues. And, you know, it's a little bit of a bummer because I didn't expect this to be, I don't want to say difficult, but I didn't expect to have this many issues happening. You know, you see all these start videos where people are like, oh, you know, we bought this engine, we popped it in, and boom, there it is, and look, I'm driving and I'm burning my tires. And I'm like, are you really burning out your tires with your first start with a engine that's not broken in? Like, you know, I don't know if I believe any of this stuff. And that's kind of why I created this channel, is because I wanted to do the realistic side of it, the trials and tribulations. Like, maybe they spent 50 hours and 5-10 tries doing this stuff, and then they took that video of like, hey, look how great it is. Because that's just not my experience. It's not what's happening. You know, it seems like the engine was built to spec and it's doing well. It doesn't seem to be an engine problem at all. You know, there's no pistons coming out of the side of the engine or anything like that. I do have a little tiny transmission leak, which I can't actually figure out where it's coming from, so I'll let the trans experts deal with that. That's fine. It seems like it's just coming out of the pan, but the pan's tight, so is it just a bad seal or something? I'm not really sure. Is it part of the overall issue that's happening, where there's maybe so much pressure building up that it's pushing the fluid out? I have no idea. I don't really know how that stuff works. So here's the other thing. So logistics is, you know, when I go to tune the car, I'm in a residential neighborhood with some major streets around me. And so, you know, finding a place that I feel comfortable to actually have the tuner, you know, with me and drive, we'll say, illegally on the streets, you know, that's an issue there. So I decided, well, let me go on, you know, servicearizona.com or MVD or whatever it's now called, and let's get a temporary pass. And then at least if I do get pulled over, you know, I'm showing that I'm in the spirit of trying to do things right. Well, if you don't have a VIN, you can't get a 3-day pass. All right, that's a screw job. So now it's like, okay, well, let me call an insurance company and see, because, you know, we're at the point where, like, if I'm putting this thing on the road a little bit, you know, maybe I want to have insurance. And again, I'm putting my right foot forward to make sure that everything is, you know, on the up and up the best I can in the situation I'm in with all these catch-22s. And they're like, yeah, we won't insure the car until it's 80% done. Well, yeah, I could lie about that, but I'm not going to. And it's not 80% done. I consider the car about 50% done. Maybe after I tweak a bunch of stuff in and, you know, do a bunch of stuff, that I can insure the car. So it's like, you know, I can't even show an officer that if I got pulled over. And so, and then the other thing is, you know, I don't own a trailer. And so for me to trailer this car down to the transmission shop, which is about a mile or so away, well, that doesn't make sense. So I'm going to have to, drive it down there to get there. And then they're saying, well, we'll test it out, and then we'll have to send the information to the transmission company, and then they have to go with their, board to decide, whether they're paying for the repairs or whatever, and whatever that looks like. And, it's a 48-hour process. And it's like, so is my car going to be inside the whole time? Well, no, we'll pull it outside the shop and leave it outside, and then at night we'll bring it back in. It's like, well, usually I don't keep the battery on it because the wiring's temporary in case something lights up. I don't want it to light up. I don't really want my car sitting outside, in the open with the Arizona wind and dust just blowing crap into it the whole time while it's in its raw form, and anybody, I don't know, whatever, could clip the wires, start the car, do whatever. And so I know I talk extremes when I'm saying this stuff, but it's stuff you have to think about, and it's stuff that I'm not actually comfortable leaving my car in 120-degree outside weather, for the next 2 days, waiting for something to come back. And so it's like, so do I pick up the car and drive it home? Will it be drivable? There's all these kind of what ifs going on, and it's going to cost a lot of money to do it correctly if I wanted to trailer it over there and stuff like that. I don't think I would do that. I'd definitely drive it down there, maybe get someone to be in front and back of me and kind of, escort me down there. But I don't know if I want to leave it at the shop for a few days either, if it's just going to be sitting outside. If I had a cover for it or something, that might be better. But I just don't know. It's one of these frustrating situations. So, that's kind of where things are at. And, I'm starting to, now that the brakes are working and things are starting to happen again, and I don't know if I mentioned before, but I had kind of a relapse with my back and neck. So it kind of happened around the same time that it took like 8 weeks or something to figure out the brakes. And so, you're probably seeing these videos back to back, but there's some pretty big distances in between them. And, so I'm actually feeling better. I'm not 100% yet, but it's been kind of a good break. And, I realize that, none of this stuff's going to get fixed unless I keep pushing forward. And, me kind of getting down about it or whatever, it's like, it's par for the course. I'll probably have to throw money at it. At this point, I'm probably going over budget, which I really didn't want to do. I would say I have been totally within budget, and I even put an extra $3,000 in the budget for Ace Hardware runs for nuts and bolts and rags or, whatever I need, because I knew that there was going to be a ton of that stuff. And it ended up being true. I was dead on with everything. And then in this last, we'll say month or two, getting the engine up, man, all the extra stuff like the air intake, which I didn't have on my list because I didn't know what it was going to be. All the clamps, the radiator hoses, the seal soldering, heat gun joint things, connectors, all that stuff, $20 here, $20 there, $20 there, $20 there. And that all adds up to literally $1,000 or $2,000 really quick. And so I for a while, for 6-8 months, I wasn't spending any money because it was already purchased. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere, this finalization thing, it was just money was just drifting out. And so now, I got to pay for a tuner, which they come to you. So this is going to be and just so you know, we're not talking about dyno tuning. We're talking about street tuning, taking the car out, making sure that it doesn't stall at stoplights, things like that. This is not about dyno and horsepower and all that. It's just about getting this thing to run the best it can on the street in real world applications. So, that's going to be $500. That was kind of in the budget to begin with, so I'm not too worried about that. But, what if we're screwing around with the transmission company and I'm like, screw it, I'm just going to pay these guys outright, fix this thing, let's be done with it, let's move on. I don't know, might be $500, if I have to get a trailer to move stuff around or whatever, well, there's $75, $85, and it just keeps adding up and adding up. So I'm trying to keep the expenses down because I feel at this point that I have gone over budget. And that's still allowing for some paint and stuff. But the paint that I'm allowing for is budget paint. Like, I don't want to say a budget paint job, but like DIY, high-end paint job, but doing as much of the work myself. And so I don't know if that's going to happen. Like, this might be, you know, I mean, if I took this car and dropped it off somewhere, they would charge me $15,000 to paint this car. There's no doubt about it. It's a difficult car, bodywork wise, to get this thing in shape. You know, and I don't remember what my budget was. It was like $3 to $5 grand or something like that, because I'm expecting, you know, $1,500 in products, and then the rest, you know, some help and doing most of the work myself. Again, I could be into it for $7 grand because I'm just not good enough to do it myself, you know. So I don't know where that's going to go. But at this point, I'm kind of so deep in that, yeah, I don't want to spend money, but if that's what it takes to finish the car, then that's what I'm going to have to do. And like, why would you not, you know? And I also got to remember, it's 2 years later. You know, I have made income in the last 2 years. So even though I have this project budgeted, I do have some expendable income to, you know, finish the car and have stuff done, you know. So, but, you know, that's not the way I look at it. Look at it as, this is the budget I created, and this is what I want to stick to. So, you know, originally I think I was somewhere around 56, and now I might be at 58 right now. That I believe includes, yeah, it does include the estimates for paint. The one thing I noticed that I never put into the budget, it was spoken about in the budget, but I didn't actually put numbers in because I just didn't know if I was going to spend money on it or not, was interior cost. So like a, you know, leather place, whatever, to do the interior. And I really did want to do some like pimped out interior in this thing, but some of the prices I was getting was just absurd. Like, I don't know, 6-10 grand. I don't remember what it was, but it was like, really? Like, we can't just add a color strip on this or whatever for like $300? It was just absurd, the numbers I was getting. And I have one guy I haven't talked to yet that has done stuff. When I had that Corvette, he redid my seat, and he was totally economical, and he did great work. But I don't know if I want to go there, because now I'm just getting to that point where I'm so over budget that I'm like, yeah, doesn't matter. I'm not sure if it does. And so, you know, it might help me win some car shows to have some really pimped out interior, but I don't know. There's certain things that are starting to come to pass where I'm like, I don't know if that really matters. One of them, for instance, when I drove around the car and I had to put it in reverse and, you know, do stuff, I've been talking about how this, you know, rear window is like 3.5 inches, 4 inches. It's really small. However, when you're turned around and you're looking out the window is literally right here. And so it's almost like you have full view, because it's like a helmet. Like, you're looking right out your face is right there. And so, yeah, I can't see much to my left unless I peek out the window, but you could actually do a full 180 turn if you can and see pretty good out the back. So what I was thinking this whole time was all about, you know, I need a rear view camera and I need all this stuff. I don't know if that's necessarily true now. So I'm not so worried about that anymore, because I was like, oh, I can see fine. And once you're looking out the window, that rear end just drops right off. And so you can pretty much see anything you want. Which I did not expect, and couldn't really get that visual while I was in the garage. It just didn't make sense. Once I had to actually do it in real life, it was like, oh, this is not a big deal at all. So what I thought was horrible visibility in the car is actually not really true. But you do have some major blind spots, you know, back right with the top coming down and stuff like that. So in any case, that's kind of where we're at today. I'm going to see if I could actually start moving some of these cables, see if I can modify the drive shaft, and kind of get in preparation for if and when the tuning guy might come in the next week or so. And I got to lead up to somehow getting this car down at the transmission shop. Or maybe we get the engine tuned so well that stuff opens up on the transmission. I don't believe that, but hey, it could happen, whatever. The other thing that was interesting is someone made a comment, and it might have been one of the Holley guys, because I was telling him, well, it might have been Greg actually, I was telling him about how I have this high stall torque converter, which all I know is, you know, you got different numbers of torque converters. But someone made the mention that my torque converter is smaller physically than a normal torque converter would be because of the high stall. And if that's the case, it's not going to hold as much fluid. So maybe I do have enough fluid in this transmission. I wouldn't think that it would be that many quarts off. It might be a quart off or a quart and a half. But we're looking at, well, we're only about, what, 3 quarts off? I don't know. Maybe that's the whole reason it's full now and not at 12 quarts. I'm not sure. So these are little pieces of information that I'm finding out as we go. And of course, when I know something, you'll know something. Yeah, that's where we're at. All right, so I messed around and there's enough where this could go under the person's legs and they could actually sit fine with their feet over there. And then I switched this around to where it's covering the drive shaft and the knuckle right there. And we should be good to go. It wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. So, I don't know. We should be good for tuning. The other thing I think I mentioned before is my right wheel was a little bit tweaked. And so I kind of got that dialed in more. It looks weird from the front, but when you come from the back, you know, it looks like it's towed in just a hair. And this one looks towed in just a hair. However, when we put a tape line on it and actually run it back, it seems like it's pretty good. But I don't know. It's hard to tell. When you stand up front and you look at it, they actually look like they're both going out. And I think that's because the car is coming in, so it looks like this is going out because the car's coming in on an angle. But it's a little bit easier to see from the back than the front. So, last thing I need to do is upload the settings that we did from Holley, upload that into the system, but that is pointless because I'm going to keep the battery off, so I'll just stick the SD card in there and upload it when it's ready to start the car later on. Go from there. Appreciate listening and hope you've been enjoying the content. And hopefully within maybe a month or so, we're going to get this thing figured out and go from there. Appreciate it. Have a great day.